mission na mahigit 1 taon na po natin ginagawa. Nakaugalian na po ng mga leaders ng iba't ibang mga diocesan councils. Panalo ang ating bayan. At kasama natin ang mga napakaraming mga kababayan natin na puno-puno rin ng pag-asa. Ito yung mga taong hindi sumusuko. Talagang they are beacons of hope mga sa paglaban nila sa kanya-kanyang mga posisyon nila, sa kanilang mga adhikain, sila ay punong-puno. Ito usapan po natin at bibigyan natin ng pagkakataon ng bawat isa na tinawagan po natin pinag-usapang magsalita sa atin sa hapong ito upang maghayag sa atin at maglatag ng kanilang mga layunin at kanilang mga programa sa sama-sama nating panalangin. Sana naman, Panginoon, ang aming bayan ay iyong patnubayan. Sa hapong pong ito, sisimulan po natin sa isang maiksing panalangin. Kasama po natin ang ating walang pagod, bagamat pagod na presidente ng Sangguniang Laiko ng Pilipinas. Mukhang mas naging pagod siya ngayon nung magkaroon ng virtual meetings. Tawagan po natin ang ating National President ng Council of the Laity of the Philippines, si Brother Roquel Ponte.
Gandang hapon po sa inyo lahat at welcome dito po sa ating twice a month conversation. Sa ngalan po ng board ng Sangguniang Laiko ng Pilipinas, and I see a good number of them here. Welcome din po. Nakita po, may dalawa po tayong past president, no? Si Brother Ernie Bordeos at si Sister Marita Wasan. No? And nakita ko rin po si Brother Tuloy, no? Ating past board member. Kaya simulan na po natin itong hapon na ito sa maiksing panalangin. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
Dear Lord, we know that you want the best for us, especially our beloved country. And sa susunod pong taon, Panginoon, we will be having our national election. This is a very crucial time in our nation's history, because the stakes are high and the future of our country, especially of the next generation, lies in this national election. And so help us, dear Lord. Guide us. Be with us as we go through this electoral process so that we may be able to really see your hand upon our country. Bless the proceedings this afternoon. Lahat po na magsasalita. Aming po mahal na chairman, si Bishop Abilio. At sana po maging makatulong sa aming pagdidiscern, Panginoon. Paano, how to best participate, actively participate in preparing for this coming election. And all this we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Magandang hapon po at
salamat po.
welcome po muli sa inyo lahat.
Maraming salamat po, Kuya Roquel. At ngayon po ay hihinga natin ng maiksing mensahe ang ating chairman of the Catholic Bishops' Conference of the Philippines, Episcopal Commission on Lay Apostolate, sapagkat alam naming malapit sa puso niya itong topic na pag-uusapan natin ngayon. Isa rin po siya sa mga obispong walang kapagod-pagod. Tinatanong ko sa kanya, sorry Bishop, baka po kayo na-istorbo namin ng inyong siesta. Sasabihin niya, siesta? Wala sa bokabularyo ko yan. Ibig sabihin, hindi talagang lahat ng may ukol na oras ibibigay. So maraming salamat. Can we welcome His Excellency Bishop Roderick Pabilia for his opening message.
Maraming salamat, Jun. Talagang in-stress mo na maiksing mensahe. Maiksi naman ako magsalita. Gusto ko lang po iugnay ang ating gawain sa ating pananampalataya. Alam po natin na ang ating pananampalataya, ang pinaka-message po ay love, pag-ibig. Pero kapag pinag-uusapan ng pag-ibig, madalas ang iniisip po natin ay pag-ibig lang sa tatay, no, sa magulang, sa anak, sa asawa, sa kaibigan, sa katrabaho, ka-brother, ka-sister. Hindi natin na pag-uusapan love of country. Pag-ibig sa bayan. Pag-ibig din po yan. No? Kaya what we are doing today is to promote love of country. And when we speak about love, we want to give the best. Kaya mahal mo ang tatay mo, we want to give the best. Mahal mo ang anak mo, we want to give the best to him. No, kasi mahal natin siya. Ganun din po sa love of country. We want to give the best for our country. We cannot remain indifferent. We cannot remain apathetic. No, kaya ngayon po na pag-uusapan po natin ano yung ating involvement sa pagdating ng eleksyon. I hope after this conversation, we have to do something, no, to give the best for our country. So, wag po nating isipin na kapag pinag-uusapan po ang politika, na kaagad yan ay madumi. Lahat tayo maging involved sa politika because as our popes have been telling us, politics is a way of loving, a higher form of love for the common good, for the good of the country. Kaya we have to be involved. Kaya ito po, tutulungan po tayo ng ating mga speakers, paano po tayo maging involved. And I admire our speakers that they themselves, they go out of their way, no, in order to organize these things na mapapakinggan natin for love of country. So, yan lang po, no, iugnay natin ito, ang ating ginagawa sa ating tungkulin na mapanatili at mapalawak ang pag-ibig. Salamat po.
Maraming salamat po, Bishop Abilio. At magsisimula na po tayo sa ilang sandali. Hinihingi po namin na sana ay paki-mute na ninyo ang inyong mga systems para po hindi natin ma-istorbo ang pagsasalita ng ating inimbitahang speaker ngayong hapong ito. Ang bago po siya ipakilala ay gusto lang natin na sabihin na lahat tayo ay dapat ma-involve sa exercise na ito at isang pagpupugay na po ang ibinibigay natin sa mga kapatid natin kababayan sa Palawan na lumabas noong nagkaroon ng plebisito noong March 21, 2021 upang ipahayag ang kanilang mga saloobin. Napaka-importante po na talagang lumalabas tayo at yun po ang isa sa mga pag-uusapan natin ngayon. Dahil po dyan, we want to give our best. We have decided to invite a Filipino patriot. He's a Filipino lawyer who served as chairman of the Commission on Elections, and also one of the framers of the 1987 Constitution of the Philippines. He is renowned for his work in ensuring that the Filipinos' voice are heard through electoral processes. And throughout his professional career has been a strong advocate of social justice and reforms. As chairman of the COMELEC, he led an effort to make the Philippines electoral system more efficient and transparent. And as founder of and honorary chairman of the Legal Network for Truthful Elections, yung LENTE, and pioneer of the National Citizens Movement for Free Elections, NAMFREL, he has mobilized and inspired citizens to stand for their rights and their country's democracy. He today will speak to us as founder and lead convener of Ready to Vote. But of course, at home, bawal ang pasaway. Dahil bawal ang pasaway kay Maring Winnie na siya pong kabiyak at may bahay ng ating tagapagsalita ngayon, the sweet and thoughtful wife of Mr. Christian Monsod. So Mr. Christian Monsod, magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Welcome to Laiko Conversations.
Thank you. Magandang hapon po. Tamang-tama po yung sinabi ni Bishop Pabilio. Kasi po yung aming theme, overall theme namin yung Reggie Boat. Ang aming theme po, Love Kita, Pinas. At mamayang gabi pong alas 8 ng gabi, ang launching namin nung aming campaign. Although we've done already some things now. Thank you again for inviting me. This is not the first time we're meeting on the political situation in our country. Met in March 2017 and again in September 2018 on the hottest topic at the time, charter change to shift to a federal parliamentary system. My talk today consists of three parts. Where are we now? Second, where do we want to go? And third, what should we do? For now, charter change seems to be dead in the water. The articulated purpose of all 7 attempts at charter change, starting with Ramos Pirma to extend his term, and including the Duterte proposals, is to improve the well-being of the people. Sounds great. Nobody objects to that, right? But all attempts have failed so far because they are perceived as mere smokescreen to the real purpose of more power and more opportunities to make money to those who already have a lot of it. The president himself admitted in 2019 that Chacha will not happen. At the same time, when two of his cabinet members, Finance and NEDA, expressed deep reservations about the merits of federalization. The latest attempt to amend the provisions of the limits of foreign ownership, I think, will not succeed because I don't think they can get 18 votes in the Senate, three, two-thirds of 24, three-fourths to convene the Constituent Assembly. However, they may still have one move if, say, somebody like Solicitor General Kalida goes to the Supreme Court to ask for an interpretation of the specific provision of the Constitution, which says that Constituent Assembly can be made by Congress upon a vote of three-fourths of all its members, implying joint vote. I think the framers, including myself, have admitted that there was an oversight in this provision and the real intent was separate vote. Hopefully, since the House has said that it also agrees with the Senate position of a separate vote, the move for charter change by a constituent assembly will remain dead in the water. We can discuss more of this later if you want, but let me just say now that I doubt very much that this administration will go all the way to a plebiscite just to amend the foreign ownership restrictions. So if at all, the proposal on foreign direct investments should be accompanied by self-serving provisions, such as postponing the 2022 elections or extending the terms of the incumbents. But that kind of charter change might be too risky for an administration whose real priority is to ensure the election of a successor whom President Duterte totally trusts to be protective of his accountability while in office. Because I agree with some government officials themselves who say that the president plans to step down from office in 2022 because he is sick, old, and tired. With the idea of a revolutionary government, so-called RevGov, led by Duterte himself, having been rejected by the military as outside the four corners of the Constitution as early as 2016, and the charter change for quote-unquote constitutional authoritarianism, similar to the Marcos quote-unquote revolution from the center, is running out of time. President Duterte is in turn running out of options to stay in office. He is left mainly with his power over a Congress, especially the House of Representatives, that still does his bidding, such as on the budget. And of course, some say his power over a Supreme Court that has been deferential to him in cases that have transcendental importance to the country. What are these? Number one, on the proclamation and extension of martial law so that now it can be declared anytime, anywhere in the country. Number two, the detention of Senator De Lima. Number three, the removal of Chief Justice Sereno through co-warranty proceedings rather than by impeachment. And number four, the denial by the Supreme Court of a petition which is allowed by the Constitution on the people's right to know the state of the president's health. The Supreme Court turned that down. In the case of the Congress, the 2021 budget already provides vast amounts of money to the Department of Public Works and Highways for questionable purposes, mostly on infrastructure and so-called special funds, which may amount to about 100 billion that could be used for election purposes. You know, the public works budget was 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 increased by 58% in 2021 compared to 2020. In the case of in the case of the Supreme Court, I think it's the issue on the Anti-Terrorism Act, on which there are petitions for it to be ruled as invalid. And if that is passed, that would be a deadly weapon for what we call lawfare, for lawfare, which is defined as the misuse of the law for self-serving purposes, such as suppressing the opposition and the will of the voters in 2022. The Anti-Terrorism Act is a proxy for martial law, with even broader authoritarian powers of detention, designation or red tagging, of surveillance, and of the freezing of bank accounts of political targets. Hence, the independence of the Supreme Court will be tested again in the pending Anti-Terrorism Court Act case. The question is, how will the Supreme Court decide or vote on this case? I will take that up again later. Where do we want to go? At this point, with your indulgence, I will talk about where we want to go using the heroism framework of Philip Zimbardo, the author of the book, The Lucifer Effect. We are told that our country in times of this division and turbulence is badly in need of heroes. The problem is that the word hero is one of the most trivialized words in our culture. Returning OFWs are hailed as heroes. A boxer knocks out his opponent and is called a hero. A rich man with private charities is lionized as a hero. A soldier who dies in battle against insurgents is buried a hero. Certainly, we can say that what these people have done are exemplary in their own ways, and they should be honored. But are they the kind of heroes that come to our minds when we say that in our country we are in need of heroes? Zimbardo says, the core of heroism revolves around the individual's commitment to a noble purpose and the willingness to accept the consequences of that purpose. And there are two types. One, heroism in service to a noble idea, and two, heroism that involves immediate physical peril. Then there is the Lucifer effect. Even more disturbing is the finding that no one is immune from it. Even good apples in a bad barrel can be corrupted, and people can be good or bad at one time or another because the line between them is permeable. There is also the evil of inaction that supports those who commit evil by not acting to challenge them. But just as there is a banality of evil, there is also the banality of heroism, where we are all potential heroes waiting for our moment to perform heroic deeds. Not the superheroism of a Mahatma Gandhi or Nelson Mandela or Ninoy Aquino, but as ordinary, everyday heroes by the courage to expose fraud when we see it, or to say no to complicity in wrongdoing, or by the hardiness to be different or difficult in order to do what is right when it is easier to conform. I beg your indulgence if I mention at this point the heroism of 500,000 NAMPEL volunteers in 1986. Some of you may have been there, who guarded the ballot with their lives with no other agenda but the country. Most have passed into history, most of them unsung, content in their anonymity. 8 of them died for the cause, all of them from the poor. So, in the context of this heroism framework, let's go back to the earlier question on the chances of a Supreme Court ruling against the Anti-Terrorism Act. I believe that there is a better than even chance of a Supreme Court ruling against it or against specific provisions that on their face are open to abuse. There have been golden moments in the history of the Supreme Court in our recent past, as when it ruled against the Ramos Pirma to extend his term, and again against the Sigaw ng Bayan People's Initiative to amend the Constitution with to amend through People's Initiative, in which uh, 10 of the justices that she appointed voted 5-5 out of the and with the result of 8-7 vote against it. And then, of course, there is the ruling for the farmers against Hacienda Luisita of President Pinoy by a 13-0 vote, with the 3 justices appointed by Aquino voting for the farmers. It was Bishop Pabilio who asked me to lawyer for those farmers. Thank you, Bishop. Let us hope and pray for the banality of heroism to prevail in our justices with another golden moment against the Anti-Terrorism Act, because it can make a big difference on the conduct and results of the 2022 elections. In addition to the ruling in the Anti-Terrorism Act, there are 3 other factors that could affect the elections. The first is media, both traditional media and social media, which has changed the communications framework. The second is the spillover effect on the still high approval ratings of President Duterte. The third is the community response to the changing communications environment. There is a fourth factor that I prefer not to discuss at this time. On media, traditional media is where many are engaging in self-censorship on the real situation in the country, either out of fear or favor, thus opening the door wider to government propaganda. Then there is the rise of social media, with numerous trolls that act like echo chambers with people who eventually confine themselves to news, even fake news and opinions that confirm their biases. I am not a communications expert, but I understand that the present communications environment may partly account for the still relatively high approval rating of the president. There may also be spillover effect from the 2016 elections, when many voters deserted the mainstream because they hungered for politicians who can make a rousing argument for drastic solutions. And the fact that until 2019, before the pandemic, the economy and the investment climate were doing relatively well, despite the deep concerns about extrajudicial killings. If many of us are increasingly frustrated today about a system that can't seem to find its bearings, can you imagine the frustration of the poor amidst a first world culture of consumerism and of shameless self-promotion by those in power and wealth to preserve their entitlements and domination, which incidentally is still happening today? In other words, Duterte the mayor got it right in 2016 on the deeper yearnings of our people and was elected by a huge plurality. We can only ignore the sentiment behind the vote for him at the peril of undertaking the wrong solutions. So the question is, what is the best response to these challenges? When the social contract between the government and the people may be breaking, the communities should take it among themselves to change the nature of the social contract. Advocating another set of leaders with the same breed perceived as quote unquote tradpoles will not work with candidates who have repeatedly promised real reform since EDSA and have repeatedly failed to deliver on those promises. The correct response to the new communications framework are social movements like the community food pantries. It is one of the most visible evidence of failure of governance and a powerful response of the people to help themselves. Spontaneous, democratic, caring, inspiring, and done with humility and without drama. From these responses should come the leaders of tomorrow from the ground up. And the church, as one of only three organizations with a national reach, can play a crucial role in nurturing the youth in this kind of awakening and commitment. All the above are happening in the middle of a pandemic unparalleled in recent history, while there is no more question about our interconnected lives and the need for solidarity to address it. We are faced with the paradox of solidarity by separation because of lockdowns, physical distancing, and quarantine. It's a complex situation for decision making, and unfortunately, our country's performance in handling the pandemic and the economic recession have been among the worst in our part of the world. The resulting daily struggle of most of our people, especially the poorest among them, against infection, joblessness, and hunger, coupled with fear generated by an often misdirected campaign against quote unquote communists that covers even community pantries, have increased the feeling among our people of disconnection from and powerlessness in the game of politics. This is evidenced by the slower rate of new registrants, not only new voters of about 4 million who will be 18 years old by 2022, but also deactivated voters who did not vote for two election cycles. Addressing the feelings of disconnection and powerlessness is the first order of the day. That is why we formed the biggest coalition ever to urge those qualified to register and to vote, because we need to show that democracy can work in our country, and not registering is losing by default their power to vote when it is most needed. Hence the target of 7 million additional registered voters by the deadline on September 20, 2021, and thereafter for a massive voter education program, especially directed to the youth and to the poor and marginalized, that could make a difference in the election results. While the elections is a regular constitutional process, the 2022 elections is important to our future as a democracy. It is when we vote as a sovereign people on who will be our agents to carry out the functions of government. Sometimes we forget that we, the people, are the principals and the government officials are our agents and not the other way around. The power to vote may be the only right in our democracy where everyone is absolutely equal, and the power of one vote, when it's protected, when it is collected, and when it is respected, is the essence of democracy. The 2022 national elections can be a window of hope to the future of a country, rebuilding itself despite the global pandemic and the failures of the past. There are already signs of that hope. As already mentioned earlier, the many acts of humanity by those with the means to those who are in need. The electoral losses in 2019 of some formerly entrenched political dynasties and the rise of young, incorruptible officials at the local level. We can help accelerate the groundswell for needed reforms by a big voter turnout in 2022. Moreover, we are doing this for a long-standing advocacy for social justice. Beyond addressing the immediate problem caused by the pandemic, there is a deeper dimension to the 2022 elections. EDSA was not only the restoration of democracy, it was also the promise to the poor of a new social order that every administration after EDSA has failed to fulfill. And those of us like me who have been in government share that accountability. That promise has moved farther from our reach as the twin problems of poverty and gross inequalities have worsened because of the pandemic and the economic recession, and because our institutions, through the rule of law, has been weakened through the years. Hence, the criticality of our choice of agents in government who will serve for the next 6 years after the 2022 elections. Everyday heroism is possible and can come in the form of registering and then voting for what one believes to be noble, especially if doing so is for the good of others, especially the poor and the marginalized. Our poor have been expecting a new social order for 35 years. History has not been kind to our poor, and neither has democracy been meaningful to them. Despite that, surveys show that they want social change achieved through peaceful democratic means, meaning free, fair, and orderly elections, as opposed to a revolutionary government, a military coup, an open-ended provisional government, or charter change to extend the terms of the office holders. Is that too much for them to ask for? That is why we have to show them that democracy can work in our country. Can we set aside self-interest and separate causes to help them finally cross the biggest divide in our country, not of culture or of territory or of identity, but the divide between the rich and the poor? Can we relive that historic moment of solidarity at EDSA that moved an international audience to tears by the nobility of its purpose? The power is in our hands. To paraphrase Pulitzer Prize awardee Alice Walker, and I quote, "The most common way for people to lose power is when they think they don't have any." Unquote. Thank you and good day.
Maraming salamat po, Attorney Christian Monsod. Napakayaman po ng inyong ibinahagi sa amin ngayon. Ako po'y nagsusulat ng mga notes ko. Hindi ako makahabol sapagkat napakarami yung sinabi na talagang kailangang himayin at talagang mapag-usapan po.
Ipapadala ko po sa inyo yung kopya.
Opo, hihingin po namin yon at gagawa rin po kami ng mas maigsing summary din po ng inyong talk sapagkat napaka-importante po ng mga binanggit niyo po ngayon, especially the everyday heroism, the criticality of our choice for leaders, and also for us to be able to address this disconnection and powerlessness of our people. So napakaganda po niyan. Ngayon po ay meron tayong chat box dyan. Alam ko po na mayroong mga gustong magtanong. Paari po nilang isulat yung kanilang mga katanungan dyan. Opo, papadala po namin ang kopya ng presentation, Brother Angel, sa lahat. Ngunit kung meron din po na gustong magtaas ng kamay, meron naman pong reactions dyan sa ibaba. At pag pinindot nyo po yan ay pwede kayong either thumbs up o kaya ay pumalakpak. Maaari na po yung ipindutin din yan at titinan ko kung matatanaw ko ang inyong mga kamay para mabigyan kayo ng pagkakataong magtanong kay Attorney Christian Monsod.
Pagkatapos po nung nung open forum before the end, can I ask one of our people, secretary, to present just about five slides for tonight's launch. But let's go with the open forum now.
Sige po. Si Sir Ivan po ba yun? Ang magsasalita
Oh, si
mamaya?
Ivan.
Opo.
Hindi, magpipresent po lang siya ng some
Opo.
slides.
Kasalukuyan ko po tinitingnan ngayon ang gallery natin kung may nagtataas ng kamay. Sa sobrang pong ganda ng inyong talk, nahihiya silang magtanong, baka sabihin nila, ay wala namang, hindi pala ganun ka-importante yung tanong ko kasi ang lalim-lalim binanggit ni Attorney Christian. Sige po, habang hinihintay po natin ang mga katanungan ng iba, madalas po mabanggit ngayon ang yung ready to vote or are you ready? Okay?
Yes.
At kanila pong ipinopromote ngayon ito. Meron na po bang latest tayong at least balita kung gumagalaw nga po ba itong ating movement na to sa ibaba? Tinatanong ko po yan sapagkat bagamat talagang gusto natin talagang hikayatin, okay, alam natin hindi naman trabaho lang ng isang grupo yan. Talagang tulong-tulong talaga tayong gagawa niyan. Kaya mamaya po ay hihingan ko ng konting update ang mga kasamahan natin sa Catholic Educators Association of the Philippines, sa AMRSP, sa People's Choice, kung kumusta po ang kanilang pagkilos, ang paggawa dito po sa area ng ready to vote. Pero gusto ko lang pong itanong sa inyo, Attorney, meron po ba kayong data ngayon kung gumagalaw na po yung itong ating ready to vote?
Yes, meron na pong meron kong feedback, as a matter of fact, yung isang set po na aming slides already say that. Pero ngayon po, hindi pa nag-uumpisa yung sinasabi naming learnings. Although we already have the toolkit, meron na kaming toolkit that's going to be distributed, and then there are some of our mga network in some places na sinasabi nila they're mobilizing transportation for the old people, for the indigenous peoples, those with disabilities who cannot go. Now the other development is that as of April 10 or last week, the COMELEC resumed satellite registration, which is important. Kasi po, that means that the COMELEC will go around the communities, and if you have at least 200 voters who will register, they will go there. And they will go, kung minsan hindi accessible yung office ng COMELEC, kung hindi masyadong masikip. And for those who are afraid na baka magkaroon sila ng infection, successful po din naman yung hiniling ng COMELEC, which we supported, na yung COMELEC people be vaccinated as priority. Kasi po there are some people who say, naku, mahirap pumunta ron sa opisina ng COMELEC, maliit at saka baka mahawa kami. So there are already steps being taken, and we're very happy that the COMELEC is resuming satellite registration, and there are some parishes who are already volunteering to the COMELEC nang pwedeng magkaroon ng satellite registration para umikot yung mga COMELEC officials in the various communities. There are about 13 or 14 weeks over. They devote one day to moving around. Then they will hit about 12 different places for satellite registration.
Salamat po, Attorney. So, binabanggit po natin ito paulit-ulit upang malaman naman din ang ating mga diocesan councils of the laity at ng mga national organizations at yung mga mayroon ding connection sa grassroots na ang COMELEC mismo naman po ay nagpalawak na of longer hours. Sabi nila from 8 to 3 ay ginawa na po nilang 8 to 5 at hiningi na rin po na magkaroon ng more days. So tuwing Martes hanggang Sabado po ay meron na rin mga registration. At ngayon po ay meron ding satellite registration for places which may have more than 200. So kung yun po ay alam ninyo sa inyong lugar, alam nyo meron pala kayong pwedeng gawin para lapitan ang COMELEC at sabing, dito nga po sa lugar namin ay marami pong nag-birthday. Yan. So dahil sila po pwede nang bumoto. So pwede po yung isang pagkilos po yan na magko-contribute ng napakalaki para sa ating bayan.
Alam
May
po
isa na-
ninyo,
Sige po.
the church is a key to this, because there are only 3 organizations in our country that are really national reach: the LGUs, the military and the police, and the church. That's why in many places, sabi namin, if you don't, yung mga ibang kasama natin mga conveners and partners, sabi namin na why don't you get together a team in your area, and the church can be the lead, because the church is everywhere, in order for them to be able to be more effective.
Meron po tayong mga tanong sa chat box ngayon, ngunit nagtaas po ng kamay kanina si Sir Teddy. So, Sir
Yes.
Teddy, pwede po bang
Yeah.
i-share ninyo
Yeah.
ang katanungan?
Thank you, June. Narinig ba ako? Can you hear me,
Sige.
June?
Opo.
Okay. Question is, I could be wrong, but I can see some confidence on the face of those wannabes who plans or who wants to continue the legacy of the quote-unquote of this administration, meaning they belong to the same boat. Are there any plans to somehow neutralize the historical 7-hour glitch that we have experienced in the last mid-election? Attorney?
Which one? Yung automation? Yung automation
Opo.
glitch?
Yung,
Actually,
I mean
yeah.
yung allegedly 7-hour glitch that happened, that when we
Okay.
returned to the canvassing, there was a big difference na sa result.
Yes. Well, actually, I looked into that, and fortunately, also, we have several people in the COMELEC Advisory Council that are very straightforward and who we work with in the Philippine Computer Society, and they explained to me what happened there. Because there is in the system, meron tinatawag silang chat room where everything goes there, and then it's filled out to the various areas that will do the actual counting, like in the provincial and so on. And there was no cheating. There were glitches there. That's why they corrected it. But we're hoping that won't happen again, because really it's very suspicious looking. Na there was a delay and then they corrected. But I was assured that the people who were allowed to investigate it and look at it, who are very, very good people, and I know them very well, said that it's okay. There was a mistake, but it was corrected.
Okay, thank you po.
Nagtaas po ng kamay si Kuya Ricky Xavier. Baka po meron din siyang idadagdag dyan sa tanungan yan. But anyway, Kuya Ricky.
Yes, good afternoon, Attorney Monsod. Regarding that matter of the 7-hour glitch, we had some information because I'm working with some people from NAMFREL, Ace Watch, etc. No? I suppose you know them. They said that all the results of the different precincts go to a particular data box, no, or data center,
Correct.
which is not actually in the flow chart that COMELEC presented as to where the votes go from the different precincts to the transparency server, to the COMELEC server, including even the municipal, no?
Yes.
And so in that particular data center, they use the telcos to transmit that, no? And it is Smartmatic who has a contract with them. And in that contract, it goes to a Smartmatic, and they are the ones who actually collate the results and then later on transmit it to the different servers. Now, several of the technical guys we're working with say this could have been the time when the results were manipulated, because that 7 hour glitch, they never really was able to, they were not, Comelec were not really able to explain it, because I remember we had a meeting there at the Laiko office, and well, someone from PPCRB tried to explain it, and what happened was that it became just uh, commotion. No, nothing was understood with what happened. And so we are concerned about this because we know that this present administration will try its best to remain in power, because with the things that they have done, several of them are going to be held liable in case they do not win this election. And that is also our concern. If there is such a data center that is being controlled by Smartmatic, and the instruction to the telcos is right after they give the information to Smartmatic, they're supposed to erase everything from their records. What would you like to share with us on this matter, Attorney?
Well, it's true. That was a vulnerability at the time. But remember that at the precinct level, there is a count that is accurate. So if worse comes to worse, that the precinct, the count at the precinct, because that is posted before it is transmitted. So that is genuine at the precinct level. Now, at the time, Louis Gia, who's one of the most honest and competent I've known, was a member of the COMELEC. And he is, by the way, now the national coordinator of coalition. And then the other member of our executive committee is Gas Lagman, who is the head of the NAMFREL and is very knowledgeable on automation. So we will work on that. And in fact, that's one of the things that we are fortunately, we have the people, and we also have not only in coalition, but as I said, in the COMELEC Advisory Council, who we can trust. But I think that in 2019, they were not able, whoever had intentions, they were not able to do it. Because there is one way to go back, and that's to the precinct level. You know, when I was one of those who wanted automation, but there was a principle that was not observed when they did this. The principle is that the voting must be private and the counting must be public. Under automation is the
Yes.
reverse. The voting is public and the counting is private. So that's a very big vulnerability of the system, and I agree with you that we must be on top of it and must guard against it very well. But I think we know where to look uh, if there is any sign that there might be some um, fraud going on.
May I follow up,
Yes, please.
Attorney Monsod?
Yes.
Well, Gus Lagman also has been working with us and helping us. And in fact, he keeps on insisting that there is no transparency in our present election system. No,
That's
what,
correct.
what happens in the precinct, nobody really knows, because once somebody votes, they just put it inside the machine, and nobody knows what happens. And whatever is transmitted, we don't find out until the ultimate results come out. And if that is the situation, then it's very possible that there is some manipulation that happens between the time it is sent out to the servers and the final results are declared, and the
Yes, sir.
actual voting. So
Yeah. Yes.
this is a
But
concern
I mean that
that we have.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that there is a precinct count. But actually, when you look at the system, the ballot is the best evidence, and the ballot is there. That's why, during the time of Marcos, we guarded the ballot box with our lives, because that ballot is the truth of the elections. Um, and we have a team that's going over this. Can you join us in the team? Please join us in the team so that we can go over the system again and see where we should be looking, and just keep on studying how it can be prevented. Yeah, I'll tell them to call you, and we'd be very happy if you join us in that team.
Thank you very
Thank you
much,
very much,
Attorney Christian
attorney.
Monsod. Thank you very
Thank you
much,
for
Kuya
your
Ricky. Oo. Alam niyo po si Kuya Ricky, talagang napaka sipag po niyan. Kaya po tama-tama na lahat naman tayo dapat ay patuloy na habulin kung meron tayo mga dapat habulin. Ngunit nakakatuwa rin po mapakinggan na meron naman po tayong narinig na assurance na doon sa 7-hour glitch na yon ay balota ang pinaka-importante na basis natin at mukhang nagtutugma naman ang mga ito. Ngunit tuloy niyo po yan, Kuya Ricky. Kailangan po namin ng mga grupo at saka mga kasamahan katulad ninyo na patuloy na humahabol sa ganyang mga issues. Pero po tayong mga
Thank you.
katanungan dito galing kay Omar ng Arkham Vicariate. Ang sabi niya po, it was mentioned that the church must play a crucial role to change the social contract. Is it the same role it played in the 80s? In your opinion, is there something the church has neglected in the last election, or what action it must step up? Okay, so hindi ko
Well,
po alam kung naintindihan niyo yung tanong. Opo.
That's okay. Kasi ngayon nga what is changed is the communication environment. It has changed with with what's happening in technology, correct? And therefore we must all adjust to that. But I think the basic point is this. Me, I do not believe that we are going to have real change in our country unless we have a new generation of leaders who come from the poor. And so when I work with my farmers and urban poor, I tell them the most important to me anyway, the most important election in our country is the barangay. Because of all the systems, of all the levels of government, is the barangay that does quasi-legislative, quasi-judicial, quasi-executive functions. And that's the government that's closest to the people. And the poor have a majority in these barangays. So we need people to nurture young leaders at the barangay level. And people tell me, it takes a long time. Yeah, of course. Barangay, and the next elections, the target's municipal, the next elections target provincial. If we do it systematically, we may be able to do it because we do need that new generation of leaders. Now, the church is everywhere in the parish, and the church can help nurture the young leaders, honest, good young leaders, so that the poor can control the barangays. And that's 2023, is the barangay elections. Let's target that after the exercise on 2022 if we're going to have real change in this country. Meron po tayong additional audience.
Salamat po sa pagsagot nyo yan. Nihingilan po natin na mag-mute muna si Brownie. Para po hindi tayo maguluhan sa usapan natin ngayon. Opo. Kasama po sa isinagot ni Attorney Christian Monsod ngayon ay yung tanong na galing naman kay Bonnie. Sir Bonnie, okay? Sabi ni Sir Bonnie, how do you in your experience assess the CDE voters nationwide? Are they informed satisfactorily or educated enough or courageous enough to vote intelligently for true servant leaders candidates? So yun po yung tanong po ni Kuya Bonnie. Okay. At sige po.
Okay. Alam po ninyo, what I'm worried about, among other things, is this. The surveys show that only 27% of our people know anything about the Constitution. 23%, 97%, 76 or 70% of the population do not know anything about the Constitution. Now, that's why we need a really good vote education program after September 30 to tell people na, kasi Now all the surveys has who is the most popular, who is the top of the mind, person you have in mind who you think will be president, and they follow the survey. So when they say, si Pacquiao, right? And so our campaign after September, for the campaign period in October, so on, and said, all right, uh, why don't we ask all of these people, ano ba ang programa ninyo? What do you believe in? Now, if they say they believe this and that, because people can be very refuted. The people need to be educated on this. That you judge a person by by his values. So when he say no, I'm for the poor. All right, well, tell us what have you done the last 20 years? Were you for the poor, or is that a newfound value in your case? Right. So we have to ask people, and then they begin to think and say, do not be intimidated by the surveys, because we have a campaign period essentially of 8 months for a voter education campaign, and we have to be very systematic about it. We were doing it with respect to the people we lawyer for, some farmers and so on. Iniisa namin, tingnan ninyo, itanong yung bang gusto nyong kandidato, ano bang record niyan? Talaga bang pro-poor yan nung araw pa? Right? O ngayon lang yan? That's the party list system. That's the problem with the party list system. It has loopholes. What is the loophole in the party list system? You should be a part of your group, generic group, or you have a track record of advocacy. So ano nangyayari? Nag-register yung tricycle drivers and so on, or security guards. Ang kanilang party list congressman lives in Forbes Park. That's not party list. So we have to go around that and say, look, this is what's happening. It's being abused, the system, and we have to correct it. We have to get the right people in the right places. Okay? So that education program is very important. That our program now, our campaign, is a sprint. That's the sprint. It's a 4-5 month sprint. After that, it's the marathon. 8 months of voter education. Okay?
Salamat po. Ako po yung naniniwala sa sinasabi ninyo na napaka-importante po talaga ng edukasyon at yung marathon na sinasabi natin after this election is so important. But I also would like to register my conviction that the education of our people, especially in the responsibility for citizenship, should really be at the beginning. Mga bata pa sila sa mga eskwelahan nila, sa mga simbahan, sa mga BECs, doon po nagsisimula yung ating training for character and citizenship. Kaya po ang tanong nila is paano ba nating ipagbabawal yung pagbebenta ng mga boto, yung pagpapadala sa mga patronage politics. It is when we begin to really do something doon sa simula pa lang, which is basically an education issue.
Alam po ninyo, pinag-aralan namin yan. Ano? You know, the 4 Asian tigers, Japan, China, Korea, Taiwan. That's 4 Asian tigers. Lalo na yung Japan at saka Korea. They teach their children, even before they go to school, love of country. Tama po si Bishop. Nauuna po sila yung love of country. At saka sila po, tayo kasi many of our parents, particularly of the poor, did not finish beyond elementary. So one of our advocacies, Department of Education, is yung tinatawag natin adult education program to reach the parents who did not graduate high school. Because for the first 5 or 6 years of a child's life, it's very absorbent. Di ba? Very absorbent yung mind ng bata. And that's where you inculcate certain values right away. Love of country, love of country.
Maraming salamat po. At this point po, mag-shift lang po tayo with your permission. Gusto ko rin acknowledge ang presence ni Atty. Alex Lacson. Nandito pala si Alex Lacson. And also the presence of His Excellency Archbishop Tony Ledesma. Magandang hapon po, Your Excellency. ngayon po ay bago ko po tawagin si Sir Ivan, ay meron din po tayong ilang mga kasamahan, mga grupo na matagal na rin pong nakikibaka. Ito po yung AMRSP, Association of Major Religious Superiors of the Philippines, na ngayon po ay tawag ay CMSP na, Conference of Major Religious Superiors of the Philippines. Tatawagan po natin si Sir Leonardo Parpados just to give us an update lang po on what the efforts and advocacies of the JPICC at this time are, so that we can really move as a movement, as a coalition. Okay? So Sir Leo, andyan po ba kayo?
Good afternoon po. Narinig po ako.
Opo, Sir Leo, tuloy po.
Ayan po. Regarding naman po sa mga initiatives ng AMRSP JPICC regarding on election, isa po doon ay yung propagating and popularizing to the most number of peoples of Pope Francis Total Sustainability Plan as a key criteria for qualification for electing the next officials. Number 2 po is yung conducting of voters education in partnership with the members religious congregation, mission partners area. These are the rural areas, urban, and the poor. Number 3 po is yung develop and propagate an election agenda, which is the maka-Diyos, makabayan, makatao, makakalikasan. Susunod po namin update ay yung meetings and fora po, like katulad po ngayon na ginagawa po ng Laiko ang pagkakaroon ng online conversation on different topics. Magkakaroon din, balak din namin magkaroon ng meetings for relating on election, human rights, and ecological issue of the Philippines po. Then, ang susunod po is yung joining or initiating a campaign for a safe, clean, and honest election. Katulad po, we are also one of the co-convener of the Lab Kita Pilipinas with said Attorney Monsod will launch this evening. We also have a partnership with the Task Force Detainee of the Philippines, Young for Rights, their online show, the Walk the Talk, to engage the young people to register themselves for to vote in incoming 2022 election. We also use our online show, the Habits, where we can gagamitin namin ito para mas mapalawig or mas malabanan po yung mga trolls at mga fake news po sa kumakalat sa social media, dahil po ang labanan po ngayon ay nasa social media po at hindi po sa mga labas. Yun lang po.
Maraming salamat, Sir Leo. Nakakatuwa po na naririnig natin kumikilos po ang iba't ibang mga grupo. Malaki po ang Association of Major Religious Superiors at sila po ay nakakalat sa buong Pilipinas, kaya po inaasahan natin na ang mga programa rin po nila ay talaga namang makakarating doon sa laylayan. So yun po yung hinihingi natin na sana'y makaabot sa laylayan ang mga programa ng AMRSP. Salamat po, Sir Leo. Tawagan ko lang po, nandito rin po ang Catholic Educators Association of the Philippines, ang kanila pong Head for Advocacy, si Sir Carlo. So, Sir Carlo,
yes.
makikibalita lang po kami. Sige po.
Yes,
po.
yes. Good afternoon po. So I'm representing the Catholic Educational Association of the Philippines. We're currently in discussions, in terms of our electoral engagements for this coming year. But I guess the first one that we just wanted to articulate is that we do have an ongoing discussion about an educational reform agenda. So from our perspective, one of the key things that we may will be talking about in the upcoming elections will be a reform agenda, especially with the results that came out with regards to our education levels. No, we're down in the different international assessments, etc. No? So it was really an alarm for the educational the sector. No, so that's one. No, so we are looking into making educational reforms an election agenda for candidates who will be running this coming elections. The second also is that there is also the reality that I think many private schools are really struggling this pandemic. No, enrollments are down. Schools are not getting tuition, and in that sense, a lot of schools are also very much caught up with survivability, making sure that their finances will be able to pay teachers, will be able to pay their staff. Nandun po, no? So there's also that dimension, no, when we're talking about the Catholic Educational Association of the Philippines, no. But there are discussions now on how we can participate more actively in the elections. Some of the regions have already started to release some statements and materials. So, for example, the CEAP National Capital Region has already released, for example, a call for schools to participate actively in pushing people to actually register, no, to vote. So may mga ganun po, no. But in terms of activities, we are looking into one, disseminating toolkits for voters registration. So we are in conversation with Simbahang Lingkod ng Bayan, and from what I understand, they're also part of Election Coalition. So alam ko yung Election Coalition, may na sila nabuo na toolkit, no, for voters registration. So we're gonna be probably gonna be adopting that, and then just really getting our schools to disseminate it and actually use the toolkit. The second is that in terms of political education, so konting reframing, maybe less voters education but more political education, we'll be using Simbahang Lingkod ng Bayan's Kwentuhang Bayan program, no. It's political education, political empowerment. So that's one of the programs we're looking at. Three is that we're planning to create and disseminate modules on one, discernment. How do we create discernment circles within our schools? How do we engage our students in discernment as well? No, I think the approach to the youth today, it's kind of difficult if we do it from a top-down basis. No, parang it's not exactly how the youth will respond, but more dialogical discussion, getting people to really share their insights on what's happening right now. No? So yeah, discernment circles. Second is Catholic social teaching, where we want to anchor our discernment on the Catholic social teaching, which I think it continues to be the lost treasure, no? The hidden treasure of the church in terms of how to discern actions on social issues. So we're thinking of creating materials na 2 to 3 minutes lang, no, easily digestible, something that you can really absorb, no, and use it to discern what kind of action will I do, how will I judge my, for example, the candidates, the politicians who are running. Do they respect the principles that we fight that we push for in the Catholic social teaching? So we would want to engage different stakeholders, especially mga communications experts, no. Possibly schools who can produce short videos, yung mga mass communication students that are brilliant at making public information available. No? So I think there's really an emphasis for us to improve on communication matters. No? Of course, we'll have webinars, potentially a radio program where we talk about issues, where we talk about, I don't know, I think this has been mentioned also by some groups, but we'll also explore doing that, no, for the association. And finally, we are in a conversation about the candidates fora. No, before it was very difficult to a certain extent, no, to organize candidates fora na physical. For schools, they are pressured to make sure that you have physical audiences of 1,000 people, di ba? Just to convince politicians to go to your school. But maybe now it actually opens up the opportunity for us to engage our politicians more. Kasi mas madali na invite online, eh, no? So maybe we can do candidates fora at the local levels and even at all the way up to the national. So we are exploring that, and we're hoping to have agendas, no? Maybe sectoral representatives to speak in this. Maybe teachers will be able to ask their questions, students to actually pose questions to politicians running. So these are all exploratory right now. We do have some activities we're we're considering. But this is something that we're at least pondering, no, on how we can go about it for the association. Yun lang po. Thank you.
Salamat, Sir Carlo. Tatawagin ko po si Bishop Pabilio ngayon dahil nagtataas po siya ng kamay. At pagkatapos po, ay hihingin ko rin sana baka mayroong gustong sabihin sa atin si Archbishop Tony Ledesma. Ngunit bago ko po tawagin si Bishop Pabilio, ay gusto ko lang sabihin na napakahalaga pong alam natin na nandyan po ang AMRSP, nandyan ang CEAP, sapagkat marami po sa mga organisasyong binubuo natin ay nasa NASP, nasa NCR, or national ang level ng kanilang movement. Samantalang ang kailangan po natin ay makababa tayo. At yung mga maliliit pong BEC na gustong gumawa ng kanilang mga programa ay kaya namang lumapit doon sa isang kongregasyon, doon sa kanilang bayan o sa isang Catholic school na nandun sa kanilang syudad. At marami po silang mahihingan ng tulong doon para po makapagpababa ng mga iba't ibang mga programa, toolkits at mga paggawa ng mga communication materials para po doon sa particular na mga lugar na iyon. Kaya't salamat po sa CEAP at sa AMRSP. At isa pong hamon din ito, nandito kasama natin ang BCBP, ang Brotherhood of Christian Businessmen and Professionals, na siya namang nagpapatakbo din ng karamihan ng mga ekonomiya ng mga bayan-bayan natin. Brothers, anong gagawin natin? Brotherhood of Christian Businessmen and Professionals. At alam ko po na napaka-active ng BCBP. Ngunit maingat din silang mahati ang grupo nila dahil pag may tumakbo sa kanila, ay baka mahati yung grupo. Hati-hatiin na natin. Importante ay makapaglagay tayo ng mga matitinong mga leader sa ating mga bayan. Alam natin mayroon namang be honest na mga propaganda tayo at mga programa. Let's choose, okay, the best people that we have in the places and make them run. So yun po ay ako'y nanunokso lang. Pero baka po gusto niyong seryosohin. Salamat po, Sir Carlo. Tawagan ko po si Bishop Padilla.
Maraming salamat po sa pagbigay ng chance sa akin para makapagsalita. Ang isa pong hamon ko sa SEAP at saka sa CMRSP, gamitin niyo po yung radio. Kasi mga mahihirap, wala naman silang mga internet. Pero ang source of information pa nila, yung mga radio. Kaya pwede na magawa ng radio program tapos ipa-air nyo lang. Mayroon tayong network of 47 radio stations. Yung sa CMT, yung Catholic Media Network. Mayroon tayong Radio Veritas na ipalabas pa-air sa mga radio o kumuha kayo ng radio slot, no, para ma-discuss yung mga issues na yan. So isa po yung suggestion. At isang suggestion din na alalahanin niyo na right now we are speaking about the registration, we are speaking about voters education, na also it's also a Christian option to campaign for good candidates. It's also a Christian option. Kaya habang nagpapatakbo tayo ng good candidates, ay dapat supportahan din natin yung mga candidates natin. So hindi lang naman ang simbahan ay nasa non-partisan. Pwede naman tayo maging partisan, basta sigurado tayo na ang sinusulong natin is working for the common good. And that's also part of our love of country. Tapos sa akin naman, on the part of the church, ang isang nakita kong problema, marami mga tao ay nagsisimba, nakikinig ng mga Bible study, nakikinig ng mga homilies, pero parang kapag sinasabi nila ng religion, mas gusto nila yung how it touched their lives, how their relationship with God, no, their duties towards their families. Okay naman yung ganon. Pero hindi lang ganon. Ang sinasabi ko, there is always a social aspect of the Christian message. There's a social aspect of love na dapat ma-connect din natin sa ating kalagayan sa lipunan. At pag nagsabi tayo ng kalagayan sa lipunan, we cannot just speak in general terms. Kasi ang pangyayari sa lipunan ay very specific. tulad ng very specific yung extrajudicial killings, very specific yung red tagging, very specific yung mining, no? Very specific yung pangangalaga sa ating kalikasan, yung pagpuputol ng mga puno. Ang problema, when you speak about these things, specific things, sinasabi namumuliti ka na. Namumulikta ka na. Sa akin, sa mga homilies ko, I am trying to point out the social aspect of the Christian message, social aspect of the gospel. So I speak about specific issues to say natin, pinag-uusapan natin yung truth. Paano yung mga trolls ang rinig nyo? Hindi ba laban sa truth yan? Magsalita na against the trolls. O kayo nagpapasa ng mga bagay. Last week, pinag-uusapan natin yung Laudato Si Week, pangalaga ng kalikasan. Ay paano yun? Tinanggal yung moratorium sa mining. Hindi man nakakasira ng kalikasan yung mining. Hindi naman nakakatulong sa atin. You have to speak about those issues na. No? At yan, ang sabi ay, si Bishop, namumuliti ka na. Kasi nagsalita ng ganyan. Kaya sinabi na, parang ayaw nating magsalita ng social issues kasi ayaw nating magsalita ng specific issues. May bahagi ng Catholic social teaching yan eh. No, so yan ang gusto kong ipaabot sa atin. May risk kapag magsila tayo ng application ng Catholic social teaching. But you have to take the risk. Para yung mga tao makita nila, pananampalataya nila, may kahulugan din pala sa boto nila. Naniwala ka sa Diyos, tapos nagboboto ka, no, ng isang nagpo-promote ng death penalty. At itong kandidatong 'to nagpo-promote ng death penalty. Eh magsasalita ka na ng specific. No, akala ko mayroon tayong kwan about taking care of human dignity. Itong red tagging, hindi ba against sa human dignity yan? No, paano yung nangyari ngayon sa Southern Tagalog 9? Gihulungan 14. So, magsasalita ka ng specific issues. So, yan ang hamon ko sa lahat. Let us not separate our faith from what happens in our society. And let us use our faith as a prism of looking at and judging what's happening in our society. Specific issues.
Maraming salamat, Bishop Pabilio, sa inyong pamumulitika. So talaga naman po, talagang kailangan magsalita tayo. Kaya po kung ayaw ninyong ma-brand kayong namumulitika, pakinggan nyo na lang po yung mga teachings ni Bishop Pabilio sa TV Maria o kaya sa First Things First. Pakinggan nyo po yun, tapos yun po yung link na ilagay nyo sa Facebook at sabihin niyo ang natutunan ko po sa araw na ito tungkol sa ating kalagayan ngayon ay maipapaliwanag na mabuti ni Bishop Pabilio. Para po tayo ay nakapagbibigay ng magandang video na madaling maintindihan ng iba. Kasi kung minsan, pag tayo magpapaliwanag, hindi naman natin maipaliwanag. Salamat, Bishop. Humahanga po kami sa inyong tapang sa pagtayo para sa katotohanan. Andito po si Excellency Archbishop Tony Ledesma. Maaari po ba kayong makumusta lang? Meron po ba kayo? Sila po yung mga matatapang na naglabas din ng mga kandidato noon ng isang eleksyon. So Archbishop, nandito po ba kayo? If you could just unmute and allow to be acknowledged.
Naka-mute si Bishop. Bishop, naka-mute po kayo.
Yes, magandang hapon sa lahat. I'm sorry, I was muted pala. I will share with you yung experience namin sa Village of Ipil when I was still the bishop there in the early 2002, 2003. nagkaroon ng election campaign din doon. But during that time, our social action workers approached me one day and sabi nila, they did not want to join NAMFREL or PPCRB. And I asked them, bakit ganon? And sabi nila, because we have to stay neutral. And they wanted to be, you might say, supportive of candidates that they know would be working for the common good. So sinabi ko sa kanila na, yes, why don't you go ahead and form your own citizens group? Make it multi-sectoral. Invite mga Protestants, Muslims, other civic leaders, but do not be under the church anymore. We can give you some support, but you are on your own. You are not under the diocese or the prelature anymore. So ganun ang ginawa nila, and they really formed a group that was called Silingan Ka, which means you are my brother in Bisaya. Pero the acronym Silingan Ka was Sibugaynon, Lihok, Ngadto sa nagpakabanang katawhan sa Sibugay, Silingan Ka. And in a sense, they went around as a citizens group, and they also formed they organized election platform rallies where all the candidates were invited to give their position muna in the local, the municipal level, and also even province-wide. And after that, mga 2 weeks before elections, they said, we will also choose our own candidates. So they did. They formed their own candidates, and they said among themselves, if 2/3 of us agree to this candidate, we will support him. Pero if we cannot reach that kind of 2/3 plurality vote sa atin or majority vote, then we will just leave it blank. So they came out with their own sample ballots 1 week, a few days before elections, and they distributed to a lot of people. Ang feedback ng ibang mga tao doon was they were thankful that there was this recommended list of good candidates, which was transpartisan. It was across political parties, not only from one political party. And the outcome of the elections was they were actually able to get a number of these local candidates voted into office. In fact, more recently, they were able to get a candidate to win for the governor's position against the member of a political dynasty that came from a nearby province, who also poured in a lot of money and resources. So para sa akin, this is really people power, but it is no longer under the church. And in fact, I think that is one obstacle why the church itself has to clarify that to be transpartisan or to be partisan is good politics for lay people. I recall sa one of our plenary assemblies sa CBCP, we did come out with a call with 3 points. The first one was to ask all the parishioners to form circles of discernment, or sa atin naman, mga BECs, or it could also be circle of teachers or circle of jeepney drivers, but to form circles of discernment. Ang pangalawang punto was really, we should ask our parishioners to engage in principled partisan politics. So again, the emphasis is principled partisan politics. They have to support good candidates. And that was the third point. It is your right and your responsibility to vote for candidates you know will work for the common good. In fact, that is the message of Fratelli Tutti. Good politics is for people who work for the common good. So I would like to repeat na yung examples Silingan Ka, it's still ongoing. They have done it for the past 2 or 3 elections, and they're able to mobilize voters to vote for good candidates. Can also be done in many other places. But again, to keep in mind that the church should counsel the laity to engage in principled partisan politics. Maraming salamat.
Maraming salamat po, Archbishop Antonio Ledesma. Principled partisan politics. Napaka-importante po niyan talaga na maintindihan natin na kailangan tayong mga laiko, okay? Tayo po ay talagang makibaka at makisalamuha sa mga specifics, meaning sa mga lugar po natin. Tatawagin ko po si Sir Ivan para po i-share lang sa atin yung meron silang ilalatag na ilo-launch yata po mamaya. So Sir Ivan, please.
Yes, pwede po ba mag-share ng screen? Yan.
Yes, Sir.
Yes, Sir Ivan.
Joseph.
Okay. Okay na po.
Thank you.
Kaya pang magbago, may magagawa pa tayo. Sumali at makialam para sa ating bayan. Isigaw mo, Lakita Pinas! Kaya magparehistro para makaboto, para sa bukas natin to. Lakita Pinas! Ating
Ayan, yun po ay ang music video po. Yan po ay music video po ng ating event po mamayang gabi. Inaanyayahan po ng Election 2022 Coalition. Kayo po na makiisa po as co-convener po ng coalition para sa event natin na Love Kita Pinas. Mamayang gabi po yan, 8 p.m. So yung Love Kita Pinas po na event natin mamaya ay ang part po ng Ready to Vote na kampanya natin para na united para sa goal natin na makapagparehistro ng 7 million voters by September 30. So nagsama-sama po lahat ng mga iba't ibang organisasyon, personalidad para magtulong-tulong po na ma-amplify yung ating message at ma-encourage, no? Isa po sa mga goals po natin hindi lamang yung pagtawid ng information kasi base sa mga usapan natin sa iba't ibang organisasyon at saka mga grassroots personalities on the ground, hindi lack of information yung dahilan kung bakit hindi lumalabas para magparehistro, pero yung motivation, ano? Kaya gusto nating idagdag na magpaparehistro tayo, boboto tayo dahil mahal natin yung Pilipinas. Again, mamaya po yan, 8 p.m. sa mga iba't ibang Facebook Live. Ayan, ito po yung mga Facebook pages na pwede nating pagpanooran. Ayan, so live din po tayo sa Kumu. Yan, kung kayo po ay may Kumu app, live po tayo doon. At saka sa YouTube pages po ng iba't ibang news organizations. Ayan po. Yun lamang po ang i-share ko. Gusto ko lamang pong imbitahin ang lahat. Mamaya po 8 p.m. Yun lang po. Maraming salamat po sa pagkakataon na makaimbita. Thank you po.
Sir Ivan, pwede paki-share mo ulit yung listahan ng Facebook pages at yung mga kasama naman po natin i-screenshot nyo na po para po kung may telepono kayo ay picturean po ninyo itong ipapalabas ni Sir Ivan para mamaya pong alas 8 ay makapili po kayo ng isang Facebook page kung saan nyo panunuorin.
Opo, actually, pwede niyo pong i-visit ang Election 2022 Coalition na Facebook page. Nandun na po lahat ng detalye at saka lahat ng link po na pwede ninyong pagpanooran.
Election 2022 Coalition.
Coalition, opo. Lalabas na po yan.
Facebook page, opo. Yan po.
Can I just...
Ang kanila pong ilinalapit ay matutuhan natin muling mahalin ang ating bayan. Okay? Hindi lang dahil sa pagpapadaloy ng komunikasyon, kung hindi itulak itong mga bagay na ito sa pamagitan ng tunay at malalim na pagmamahal para sa ating bayan. Salamat po, Sir Ivan.
Can I just add something?
Yes po.
I have to say this. I am very proud of the fact that we have over 40 talents from all sorts of. We even have the Actors League with us, and almost all of them are very young people, and I'm so proud of them. All of them are giving their services pro bono for the country. Yan, nagpapasalamat po ako sa kanila.
Salamat po. Yung kumanta po ng kanilang music ay isang world-renowned artist din. Kaya yan ma-appreciate ng mga kabataan natin kung yan po ay maipapalaganap din natin. Talagang love kita, Pinas. Kasama po natin ngayon ang presidente naman ng Brotherhood of Christian Businessmen and Professionals na nagtaas ng kamay. Palagay ko po ay magbibigay sila ng announcement kung anong gagawin ng Brotherhood of Christian Businessmen sa darating na eleksyon. So, Brother PV, ano po bang aming hinihintay sa inyo?
Wala akong announcement, June.
Sige.
Shinare ko na at dinike ko na yung coalition sa Facebook at shinare ko na rin sa Facebook story. Kasi nainganyo ako. I took a look at your page and it was very interesting. Kasi we're on the lookout on who we can partner with. Diba? We don't want to do something by ourselves. Sayang yung effort. Best to partner with other groups that's consistent with our principles. Gusto ko lang paalam kay June kasi binanggit mo yung to offer ourselves. As a matter of fact, in 2016, we encouraged some of our leaders and members to run. And 82 of our leaders and members actually won in local in local elections from vice governor down to barangay level. And we could keep on supporting them kasi sabi nila ang hirap to continue to practice the principle of honesty when you are there. And so we support them. And we will continue to encourage leaders and members of the BCBP to offer themselves to serve the country. Yun lang.
Ito po mga sinabi ni Brother PB ngayon ay naka-record at ipalalabas natin sa buong CBCP News at hinahamon natin ng CBCP, magpatakbo kayo sa Kongreso. Yeah. So kung sa Kongreso makukuha natin yung mga upuan, ay may mas matindi tayong laban. Yes, Mr. Attorney Christian.
Meron po akong data. Alam po ninyo sa election natin, 46 million voted for the elections, no? Sa regular elections. Only 27 million voted in the party list. Doon sa party list po, hanapin ninyo yung mga real ground level sectors. No? Kami, for example, we have a farmer group that's running. And if we can just increase that volume of 27 million to say 35, 40 million, we can get people into Congress. You know, somebody, the lowest vote was 195,000, has a seat in Congress. Surely we can have votes of more than that, of more than 200,000 all over the country for real party list people who belong to the poor and the marginalized. Yan pong piliin natin. So I'm urging you, examinin po ninyo yung party list at let's vote in the party list and let's vote good people in the party list.
Kuya Ricky, please.
Thank you, June. I would like to just add to what Archbishop Ledesma said. Based on his sharing, you know, there was a group in the province that decided to become partisan, you know, and not remain, non-partisan. And I think that's very important because there are many Christian groups, particularly Catholic organizations, who always say we cannot join, we cannot participate because we are non-partisan. But if we are non-partisan, it is going to be very difficult for us to be able to support the good leaders. We have to get involved, just like what the people from the province of Archbishop Ledesma did. And they were able to successfully elect good leaders for their province. And that's what we're trying to do, you know? People's Choice is primarily a faith-based organization, and we're trying to encourage people to join us so that they can participate in the selection of the candidates, so that they can choose the candidates that will run for our country. In our past, it has always been, small, well, not really small groups, but political parties that do not really represent many people. They are usually made up of political dynasties, or if not vested interest groups, and they are the ones that choose the candidates. And we end up having to vote for those candidates that they chose. We're trying to reverse that. We're trying to say, let the people be the ones to choose. Give them that power to choose who should be the candidates. And we have a criteria in order for them to be able to vet and eliminate those that do not actually deserve our votes. In fact, our criteria has 5 knockout issues. issues which will automatically remove candidates or potential candidates who, like what Attorney Mansod said, who support extrajudicial killings, who do not support our sovereignty, no, or who is involved in corruption, and are not willing to even release their SAL-N. These are 5 issues that you know, people can look at and say, etong tao na ito may ganito. Kung ganyan, tanggalin natin, huwag na natin consider, and let's look for better people. And that will open up the opportunity for other people, better people to run. And we can support them. And the reason I'm saying this is because we, the People's Choice Movement, also joined the coalition of Isang Bayan. And that is the objective of Isang Bayan. We're able to select good leaders. There is a program of a platform of government, no, that is going to be presented to the potential candidates and ask them, are you going to support this kind of program? That is one of the basis also of whether they are going to be ultimately form the united slate. We have to unite, otherwise we will lose. That's what happened in 2016. We had Duterte today because 2 candidates run against each other who were more or less the democratic forces, and they divided the vote. And so the minority actually was the one who came out. We cannot have a repeat of that. So my request is for us, especially the Christian organizations, to get involved. Get involved, not just say, through voter registration or education, but get involved in supporting the candidates that you yourselves have chosen. And that's my appeal, so that we can change the kind of government that we have, and we can have a better life for all our people, especially the poor. That's all. Thank you very much.
Maraming salamat po. Okay. Tawagan ko po ngayon si Attorney Alex Lacson.
Okay. Good afternoon.
Yes, we can hear you.
Good afternoon, Sir Christian. Good afternoon, everyone. I have 2 questions po. No? One is, this is actually in the conduct of the elections. Is it possible ho na di ho ba, I think sa isang precinct, on the average, 300 to 400 registered voters. So which means ang 50% po niyan, kung 400 voters sa isang precinct is 200. What if we prepare po a petition for manual counting of the ballots in the precinct and signed halimbawa siya ng, say, 75% of the registered voters in the precinct. So, yung petition na hinanda ho natin, we ready it doon sa labas ng presinto. Then, at the start of the voting, we ask the voters na pwedeng mag-sign kayo dito. This is our petition for manual accounting of the ballots in that precinct. What if kung nakuha po natin yung 75% of the signatures of the voters po doon, ito ho ba papayagan siya ng precinct election officials? That's my first question po. No? Is it possible? Is it tenable? Kasi kung allowed ho siya, then maybe we should test it in every province. We look for groups that gagawa ng petition. Tapos kung parang ang purpose lang po natin is to compare yung results ng automated counting and tapos yung results ng manual counting. So we will not stop the automated counting. We will not stop the transmission of the results of the automated election. But right after na napadala nila, there will be no disturbance po, no? Except that right after na napadala ng yung results ng automated counting, we conduct a manual counting of the ballots in that precinct. So not in all precincts, but only a few precincts po siguro per province para ma-determine na po natin that the results are the same. No? later on, kung merong discrepancy sa results, then maybe that could be the basis for our questioning the validity of the election, either in one area or as a whole. That's my first question po, no?
Can I answer that now?
Yeah, yes, sir, yes, sir.
All right.
Yes, sir.
You know, actually, there is in the system called random manual audit, which is supposed to be done after the voting.
Yes,
That's
sir.
part of the system, random manual audit. I'm afraid of saying that if we get X number of votes, then those are the precincts where there's going to be a manual count, because that's a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
It can be done by either one to cheat, right? If you have control of a certain precinct, then you do it, and then you get away with it. That's why the system provides for a random manual audit, so they don't know when that's going to happen. And that random manual audit is being done by civil society, authorized by the COMELEC nationwide. So maybe that's really the better answer. And maybe what we should do is ask the COMELEC to expand the number of random manual audit of precincts, the number of precincts, so that we have a realistic view of what really happened, rather than depend on the voting in particular precincts, which can be controlled by people. So that's a double-edged sword.
Yeah. So how is yung ginagawa pa ng civil society groups right now? Yung random manual voting po. So yeah. So how audit? So how is it being done by the civil society group?
Well, actually, sa PPCRB was doing it, and they had results, and the results that they had said that generally they matched the automated count and the random manual audit. But I think that maybe we can ask the COMELEC to increase the number of those precincts. The problem is, do we have the volunteers to do that? Because that's going to happen in the evening, right? So if we can guarantee that we will have volunteers who are willing to do that, then we may be able to go to the COMELEC for it.
Yeah. Yung basihan po ng random manual audit po, yung ballots mismo sa precinct level, or is it just the results?
No. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Manual count.
Yeah. So how do we expand it po? How do we expand it?
No, it just depends on the COMELEC to increase the number of precincts. So that's what we may sit down with the COMELEC with. But they're not going to change the system that is already there. Unfortunately, the COMELEC has already decided to use the same system. So if we can have minor changes, like increasing the number of precincts to one that is probably more more validity, we can do that. We can try to do that. And we really ask is the statisticians, the ones who know how to come up with a valid conclusion, to tell us what should be the number of precincts to get a reliable conclusion.
Yeah. So based on the 2019 elections po, how was the random manual audit?
They say that it matched that the votes not exact, but enough to say that it's reliable result.
And based on what percentage po yung audit?
I don't remember now, but we can check that. Yes.
All right. See. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. That's all my question.
No, you have another question.
You have another question?
No. My other question is, based on your presentation po kanina, what do you think are the top 5 or biggest reforms that we need in the country?
It's all in the Constitution. Number 1, social justice is the heart of the Constitution. What constitutes, right? The two long-term solutions are education and health. And we are very poor on that. And the point is, the public schools should have the same quality, so that even the rich want to put the children in those schools. And the health are the centers in each place, municipality, in some places barangay, where you have a health center, right? And the health center is so good that even the rich want to go there. To me, that's the standard. Now, in addition to the education and health, then there are the four asset reform programs under the Constitution, Article 13. What are these? Agrarian reform, urban land reform and housing, ancestral domain and fisheries, where the poorest of the poor are. Now, if you do not want to read the whole Constitution, I suggest you look at only three articles. Article 13 on social justice, Article 12 on the economy, and Article 2 on the Bill of Rights. There you have everything. And if you notice, the economy and social justice provisions coincide. You have the principle of the use of property bears a social aspect, right?
Yeah.
And that's in the economy. That's not in the social justice. And to me, that's it. So if I were going to ask the candidates, regardless of their party, what do you stand for? Are you happy about agrarian reform in a country? What do you know about it? Right? If they don't say, well, it's not a failure. It's underperformed because Congress did not fully budget money there. Right? It was supposed to have 225 billion. They only gave 175. If the candidate does not know these things, I won't vote for him, whether he's isang bayan or not. I will vote for a candidate across party lines. So I'm non-partisan. I'm voting for principles and values of the candidate, and I'm going to cross party lines to do that. Because as I was talking about heroism, right? What does he say about heroism? That it's permeable, right? First, good apples in bad baskets of apples. And then people maybe value, the value today and tomorrow they're not. It's permeable. And that's my point. There are good and bad people in every government. And we should work with the good people even in a bad government. And that's what we're doing for our farmers. So this is what we ask the candidates, right? This is what we ask them before we vote for them. Doesn't matter what party they're running on.
One final question, sir, if you're okay po. What's your latest thoughts on Isang Bayan po?
Well, Isang Bayan, I think they're trying to unite the opposition, fine. And they may have one. I think it's good for them if they can get one slate. But I think none of the presidential candidates have committed to that yet. Am I correct? Right. Now, in 2019, whoever expected that the entire lineup of the opposition would not win? Who did not think that? So we asked our farmers and our urban poor, ano nangyari? You know what their answer to us is? Kasi po, maraming pangalan doon na matagal na nasa politika at matagal na nangangako sa amin, ganito pa rin kami. Kaya kami nagbabasakali kami dito kay Duterte na baka ito nga ang angel of hope namin. Okay? And they say, tsaka may mga bagong pangalan dyan, purbahan natin. So this election is a test of that. Whether they really apply the principles and say, all right, bumoto kayo dito noon, ano nakuha ninyo? Are you better off now? Right? But don't rely on political families with political names for 30 years because those are not trusted by the voters, by the poor, because they did not deliver for 35 years. Okay?
Sir, thank you.
Thank you very much, Attorney Alex Lacson. Kailangan ko puntong pa rin yung pangako ko kay Sir Don Carpio na tatawagin ko siya sa Sir Don. Meron po kayong katanungan?
Magandang hapon po sa ating lahat. Tanong ko lang po, sana may PPCRB po nun tsaka kay Bishop Pabilia. Possible po ba ng ating mga simbahan ay maging registration center? Kasi halimbawa po sa Manila, napakasikip po ng registration center po, no? Mostly District 1 to 6 sama-sama po.
So, ako ang sasagot. Tanong mo, possible yan. Mag-request kayo. Sinabi ni Attorney Christian Monsod, mag-request kayo.
Yes.
Mag-request ang parokya na dito, malapit pang hindi naka-register. Dito na magpa-register. Posible yan. Alam nyo, ako nag-register many years, mga 10 years ago, sa isang parokya. Hindi naman ako pumunta sa Comelec. No, kasi may satellite doon. Dito sa Tondo, doon ako nagpa-register. No, kaya pwedeng gawin ganun.
Yes. That's correct.
Salamat, Sir Don.
Follow up po. Bishop, nag-request po kami sa District 3. Ang sabi po nila sa amin, hindi po daw sila nagkakaroon ng satellite registration.
When did you go there? When did you talk to them?
Last month po.
Hindi. Kasi they only resumed recently. Baka hindi pa lumalabas yung bagong rules ng COMELEC. Kasi they suspended it. I will check on that with the COMELEC whether their notices have gone out.
Okay po, salamat po.
Thank you, Sir Don. Sana'y magtagumpay ka sa iyong mga adhikain na magkaroon ng mga satellite registration areas. Bago ko po tawagan si Bishop Pabilio sa kanyang pangwakas salita, baka po mayroon ding final words and message si Attorney Christian Monsod para sa atin na talaga namang naging napakayaman ng ating conversation ngayong hapong ito. Some final words, Attorney Monsod?
Well, my final word is that everyday heroes is possible. And we can all be heroes with respect to our country.
Napakaganda po. Yan din sana yung final word ko kasi ang ganda Pero pagbibigyan ko na po si Bishop Pabilio na magbigay din ng napakagandang final word.
Okay, maraming salamat po dito sa ating conversation at nakita ko marami nag-follow. Sana po i-share ninyong i-share kasi yung message po ay talagang kailangan natin ngayon. We have to work together. Ang isang na-inspire lang ako sa sinabi ni Attorney Christian Monsod about the party list. Ito, suggestion ko sa mga laiko, sa ating lay groups, baka PCM. Pwede ba isang pwedeng trabaho nyo, isalain yung party list na lalabas at maglagay tayo ng listahan ng mga totoong party list na i-alok natin sa mga Katoliko. Na ito'y talagang mga at Katoliko na mga party list na totoong party list na talagang mga mahihirap ito, ilagay natin sa Kongreso. And I think we can do that and tell them to vote. Totoo, marami po hindi nalalagay ng boto kasi hindi naman nila alam yung party list kung sino-sino yun. O kaya tayo na siguro ang mag-vet nitong mga na ito, ang magsuri at sabihin natin, ito yung pwede niyong botohin, totoong party list, talagang mahihirap ito, pumili kayo rito. That's another strategy that we can help our voters.
Maraming salamat, Bishop Pabilio. Patapos na po tayo sa ating conversation sa hapong itong. Bibigyan lang po ako ng ilang mga announcements. Unang-una po, mayroon pong imbitasyon ng galing sa isang grupo called Archer Talks. Ito po ay update on the West Philippine Sea. Kumbaga sinasabi nila na bagamat napakarami nating pinag-uusapang mga issue ngayon, huwag nating kalilimutan yung isang napakahalagang issue din tungkol sa West Philippine Sea. At ito yata po ay pinopromote ng isang grupo, ang pangalan ay Archer's Talk. So ipapadala na lang po namin via email yung kanilang imbitasyon para sa ating lahat. Pangalawa po ay ang Laudato Si Week po ay magtatapos po sa Monday. Nagsimula po noong May 16 hanggang May 24. Kaya po sana ay patuloy din nating kilalanin ang kahalagahan ng sama-sama nating pagtugon sa pangangailangan ng ating kalikasan. To hear the cry of the earth and to hear the cry of the poor. Bukas po ay Pentecost Sunday, birthday po ng simbahan. At kantahan po natin ang ating iglesia ng happy birthday at humingi po tayo ng grasya na ibigay lalo sa atin ang kanyang Espiritu Santo. Yan po ay isang bagay na kailangan natin ngayon. Kanina umaga po ay pinakinggan ko ulit yung First Things First. Isang napakagandang mag-reflection ni Bishop Pabilio sa mga first readings na binabasa natin sa ating simbahan. At napakaganda po nung huling mga binitawang salita ni Bishop Pabilio. Napipigilan, ngunit patuloy na nagpapahayag. Si San Pablo daw, bagamat siya ay nakakulong, ay mahalaya namang nagpahayag ng salita ng Diyos. Gayon din po raw ang kalagayan natin ngayon. Napipigilan, ngunit patuloy na ang pagpapahayag. Sana po sa atin man ngayon, kahit tayo'y sinasakal, ay lalo namang sumirit, okay, ang pagmamahal natin sa ating bayan. Na habang tayo'y tinatakot, ay lalo naman tayong tumapang sa pagpapahayag ng katotohanan. These are all discipleship issues. And we are all disciples of hope. Sana po sa Pentecost, matanggap natin ang empowerment ng Espiritu Santo so that we can all be disciples of hope. We can be commissioned by Christ. We can all continue to do the mission. Sa ngalan po ng Sangguniang Laiko ng Pilipinas, nagpapasalamat po kami kay Attorney Christian Monsod. Hihintayin po namin ang inyong napakagandang presentasyon. Marami po kaming natutunan, napakayaman po ng ating pag-uusap sa hapong ito. Sa lahat po ng mga nakisalo sa ating usapan ngayon, maraming salamat po and advance happy Pentecost sa inyong lahat. Salamat po.
Salamat, June.
Okay. Thank you rin po. Thank you rin po sa lahat.
Thank you, Laiko. Brother June, thank you.
Panahon ng halalan.
Madami namang kandidato, madaming mukha at pangalan.
Sino kaya ang bagay sa ating bansa? Hindi lamang forma at salita. Sino o sino kaya? At sana kahit na sinong manalo, pagkatapos ng bilangan, sana naman ang panalo ay taong bayan.
Sino kayang mananalo at magiging totoo?
Sa pagnanais ng taong umunlad sa madaling panahon. Sino man siya, pag-asa kaya ang dala. Sana siya'y tuwid at tapat sa bansa.
God is telling all of us right now, whoever you are, wherever you are, be still and know that I am God.
So how will you recognize a true Christian? The true Christian is always grateful. The favorite word of the true Christian is thank you. Because for the true Christian, everything is a gift.
When you die to yourself, forget yourself, and give yourself as a gift to another person, that, my friend, is when you taste authentic, permanent joy.
This is FaithWatch TV, today's leading Catholic online TV. We at FaithWatch create all original content ranging from reflections from the Church's bishops and priests, lessons on catechesis, testimonies of her favorite inspirational speakers, talk shows, and news programs. Powered by Areopagus Communications, FaithWatch TV aims to deliver to you the best and the latest inside and around the Catholic Church, neatly packaged for the Filipino Catholic. FaithWatch TV, today's leading online TV, your Catholic channel.